Oral questions. Questions orales. The honourable member for Thornhill.
The same speech he's already given, and Canadians are still wondering when they'll see results. He has the power to greenlight major projects, build pipelines, but zero have been approved while keeping every anti-development law on the books. Over $1 trillion in net investment now gone from the country, and a year past his own deadline, no deal. Just fear and division without results. More speeches and more agreements to make agreements. No pipelines, no deal, no investment, no relief at the grocery store. When does the Prime Minister stop auditioning for the job that he already has?
The Honourable Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
I'll help her get off clickbait and go through the province. $8 billion in Goose Bay. A new transmission line between Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. A new wind farm in Nova Scotia. A new port in Montreal. A new SMR in Ontario. A new mine in Manitoba. Multiple new mines in Saskatchewan. New CCUS in Alberta, a new pipeline in Alberta. New LNG in BC. Maybe they should get out of the clickbait.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Things announced and not a single one of those things built. And I'll give him some new numbers from today. And the new numbers are, in March, Canada had the worst food inflation in the G7. Not the second worst, but the worst. Every G7 country faces the same global factors, yet Canadians are paying more than all of them. After years of deficit spending and higher taxes, Canadians now lead the G7 in household debt, housing costs, and food inflation. When will the Prime Minister stop giving the fancy speeches and bring down the cost of government so Canadians can afford to live?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
We acknowledge the challenges that we're seeing, Mr. Speaker, but what a great list. But I know it's Monday and the Conservative want more good news, Mr. Speaker. And I have a few of them, Mr. Speaker. Coming out of Washington, the International Monetary Fund just said that Canada has the strongest fiscal position of the G7, Mr. Speaker. The strongest fiscal position. The second fastest growth in the G7, Mr. Speaker. Almost twice as Germany and Japan. And good news, Mr. Speaker, our recruitment in the armed forces is an all-time high, Mr. Speaker. We'll build in this country for every Canadian.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
On display, the minister thinks that everything is going fine. But for everyone drawing a paycheck, feeding a family, or paying a mortgage, that reality is much different. Last month, the Prime Minister stood in this House and, quote, said, quote, affordability is the best it's been in over a decade. While we get the same speeches for 4 straight months and running, Canada has had the worst food inflation of all of our allies, and that too deserves a speech. On top of all of that, Canada has the highest household debt and the only shrinking economy in the G7. If affordability is the best it's been in a decade, then I have one question for him. For whom?
The Honourable Minister for Jobs and Families.
Mr. Speaker, while this government's been focused on giving Canadians a boost today and a bridge to tomorrow, you know what the opposition's been doing, Mr. Speaker? Sticking spokes in the wheels of Canadians, whether it's affordable childcare, building major projects, training skilled trades workers, making sure youth can afford post-secondary education, feeding kids at school. It doesn't matter, Mr. Speaker, what the support is. They say no. They have no vision for this country and no vision for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, in his latest amateur video, the Prime Minister is playing the same old speech, the same promises, the same stage scenes, and lack of results. Meanwhile, no pipelines, no trade deals, fewer homes, and a skyrocketing deficit. We don't need more speeches or illusions. We need results. When is this Prime Minister going to deliver? The Honourable Minister for Canada-US Trade. Mr. Speaker, this is exactly what our government is doing. We're delivering economic benefits for Canadians in all regions of our country. I'd like to thank my colleague for his support for Bill C-5 to once again build big projects in Canada. In his province, for example, the best example example is Nouveau Monde des Graphites. An important mine is being planned. There's an announcement for the start of construction at the Port of Montreal. Another piece of good news, and there's other coming. The honourable member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the reality, the real truth is that for everyday Canadians, or for those who are listening to us, is that we still have the worst food inflation in the G7. But the Prime Minister prefers to blame global factors rather than taking responsible for this. And the Liberals are trying to distract attention from reality. Can the Prime Minister give us specific facts to bring down food costs? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. It's good that we're talking about people, but when he talked about the IMF, he forgot to mention, for people who are listening, is that this last week the IMF said that Canada has the strongest fiscal position in the G7. The IMF says that Canada has almost twice the growth than Germany and Japan. So, Mr. Speaker, we're recruiting in our Canadian Armed Forces at record levels. So we're working with Canadians, and we're going to build a strong Canada that we can all be proud of. The honourable member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, in his video, the Prime Minister says hope is not a plan, but his plan right now is to give up 74% of our exports to the U.S. in exchange for 4% with the Chinese communist regime. And this is madness. He's also promised a deal with Donald Trump by July 21st, 2025, but there's still nothing solved, and even there's been other tariffs since added. The Prime Minister said he'd be judged on grocery prices, but yet now we're the worst country in the G7 on this. When will the Prime Minister finally deal with this situation? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, our colleague is wondering what we're doing to improve the situation. Well, that's exactly the work that the Prime Minister is doing since we've won our election. It's diversifying our markets for trade with other partners who are reliable, and it's once again building new projects in Canada's national interest, and it's by support for industry and workers which are facing unjustified tariffs and illegal tariffs from the U.S. government. Good news, Mr. Speaker. We're doing all of these three things at the same time. The honourable member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, in a video, the Prime Minister told those hoping for a return to normalcy with the U.S. that nostalgia is not a strategy. Fair enough, but we've waiting for a year now for this strategy. And in the meantime, Washington is now imposing tariffs on our steel and aluminum containing products based on their full value. This is a disaster for hundreds of business and for local processing. So aside from calling them nostalgic, what is this Prime Minister going to do for our entrepreneurs? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, with all due respect for my colleague, the Prime Minister said that nostalgia is not a strategy, and he's perfectly right. But good news, Mr. Speaker. We have noted changes with our relationship in the U.S., and that's exactly what I said a few moments ago. We are diversifying our markets with other reliable trade partners. We are building national projects, but we're also understanding the importance of working our steel, aluminum workers and their industries. And we're doing these two things at the same time. The honourable member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, but we still have to have the Prime Minister obtaining results. And we need to strengthen our ties with the U.S. and not discard them as a weakness. On the other hand, we talk about economic diversification, but we're not going to be able to redirect 80% of our revenues from the U.S. overnight. In the meantime, there are businesses in Quebec cutting shifts or closing down ever since the U.S. started calculating its tariffs based on the total value. So will this government help before it's too late? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank our colleague for her question. Yes, we're doing both of these things. Like my colleague said, we do have a trade relationship with the U.S. Last week I was in Washington with the Secretary of Treasury, and we have an excellent rapport. At the same time, we are diversifying our exports differently because we need more stability and predictability, and we have to open up our exports to all countries worldwide. And recently, Mr. Speaker, we signed a series of agreements which makes Canada the only G7 country with a trade deal with all the G7 countries. We have an enviable position, and we're going to build a strong Canada together. The honourable member for Saint-Guy-Saint-Pégot. Mr. Speaker, as U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum escalate, it's hard to get a clear picture of the negotiations. The PM doesn't have much regard for Parliament. He's rarely seen in interviews, and we've learned that he's also stingy with his consultations. On Friday, the Federation of Chambers of Commerce and the Quebec Manufacturers Association spoke out to lament that they're not being consulted as they were before. And even Jean Charest, the PM's advisor on the U.S.-Canada relations, laments that the process is too centralized. Why is this Prime Minister refusing any transparency? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, it'll come to no surprise that I don't agree with the premise of this question from my colleague. He talked about Jean Charest, someone who we admire a great deal. I spoke with him last week for roughly an hour and a half, and I had the opportunity to meet with him. Well, I will later this week. He also talked about the Federation of Chambers of Commerce and Quebec. Véronique Proulx was in Ottawa today, and I have had a very good discussion with her about the issues the colleague mentioned earlier today. So I'd like to thank her for her question.
The honourable member for Calgary East.
The only thing emptier than the Prime Minister's weekend of recycled speeches are Canadians' shelves, stomachs, and gas tanks. Today's data confirmed Canadians have the highest food inflation in the G7 for the 4th straight month. The Liberals can't blame global factors. Their industrial carbon tax and the Liberal fuel standard have made our food and fuel more expensive. Why won't the Prime Minister cut the recycled speeches and cut the Liberal fuel taxes for the rest of the year instead?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that member must have forgot that we just announced a groceries and essentials benefit, putting up to $1,400 in the pockets of Canadian families. In fact, Mr. Speaker, just this past weekend we announced that the first 50% payment is June 5th. We've also announced a pause in the federal excise gas tax. On this side of the House, we're going to continue to focus on affordability. That side's continue to focus on podcasts, rhetoric, and bluster. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Calgary East.
If Canadians got $1 for every time the Liberals brag about a $90 tax cut, they'd have a whole lot more than $90 in their pockets. The Liberal math was on full display last week. They took a third of the tax off for a third of the year. And that tax trick doesn't give Canadians real relief. In fact, if they implemented our plan, Canadians would have saved 25 cents per litre or $1,200 a year. Instead of cutting a third of the tax for a third of the year, why not cut all the tax for all the year?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, it is today the day where we implement the 10-cent per litre reduction on gasoline in Canada. Also 4 cents a litre on diesel, and Mr. Speaker, 4 cents a litre on jet fuel. These are important reductions. They go with the groceries and essentials benefit that we've already brought in to this House. This government is doing many things to help Canadians with affordability. And Mr. Speaker, it must be pointed out that these many things are being done despite the obstruction and the opposition of the...
The honourable member for Alderman Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, many Canadian families, including the ones that I'm hearing from in Haldeman, Norfolk, are feeling this strain every time they fill up their vehicles and buy groceries.
We're getting close to that moment when we may have to give the file over to someone at the back of the House there. The honourable member may begin from the beginning.
Mr. Speaker, many Canadian families, including those that I'm hearing from in Haldimand, Norfolk, are feeling the strain every time they fill up their cars and they buy groceries. Gas prices remain out of control, and food inflation is still the highest in the G7. For rural residents, there's no public transit alternative. They must drive to work, drive to school, and drive to the grocery store. When will this Prime Minister finally deliver real relief and end the federal taxes on gas for the rest of the year?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Children and Youth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are listening to Canadians and delivering relief at the pump. 10 cents a litre today, 4 cents on jet fuel and 4 cents on diesel. Recently, I spoke with the CEO of Montreal's Welcome Hall mission about lifting the federal gas tax, and he told me it is, quote, a welcome measure that translates into meaningful cost savings, allowing more resources to be directed to providing core services. Our government continues to listen to people, including community leaders like the Welcome Hall mission, as we lower costs and help families make ends meet. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Haldimand, Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, rising fuel costs are a daily reality for Canadians. Fresh vegetables are up nearly 8%, and fuel costs continue to skyrocket. Canadians pay 20% more for gas than Americans. At what point is this Liberal government going to stop blaming global factors and take responsibility for these rising costs? When will the Prime Minister finally remove all of the federal taxes on fuel and deliver real relief for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Women and Gender Equality, Small Business and Tourism.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Starting today, as mentioned, we're suspending the federal fuel tax on gasoline and diesel. Combined with the elimination of the consumer carbon tax, Canadians are saving 28 cents per litre at the pumps. Right. What this means is $2.4 billion back into the pockets of Canadians. And in terms of the province of Ontario, Mr. Speaker, in Ontario alone, over 4 million people received the GST. That's $2.2 billion in direct support for families across the province, and we're going to continue doing everything we can to support Canadians during this time. Nice. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals continue to blame global factors for skyrocketing gas and grocery prices while offering Canadians only a partial temporary tax cut. They've been playing with matches for years, printing money, hiking the carbon tax, hiking the fuel standards tax, and now they act surprised when the House is on fire. Canadians see through their excuses and repeated speeches offering more illusions. When will they stop the blame game, take responsibility, and give families real relief by removing all federal taxes on gas and diesel for the rest of the year?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Secretary of State for Children and Youth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I've mentioned, we are bringing relief to Canadians at the gas pump today, which represents 10 cents a litre now through Labour Day. We have been there for Canadians from the moment this new government took office. A tax cut for 22 million Canadians. We're delivering a groceries and essentials rebate, which is a meaningful boost to over 12 million Canadians that will put more money in their pocket. This is on top of dental care, which is reaching 5 million Canadians, wow. National school food, childcare. We are there for Canadians and helping them with this affordability. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister warned Canadians of making hard sacrifices, and now he's refusing to show up at the bargaining table with our largest trading partner. Liberal taxes make Canadians pay 20% more for gas. His fear-mongering is making relations worse, hurting our economy, and he's deliberately pitting Canadians against the United States, all while the Liberals cozy up to the CCP. We could be expanding our resource industry and building our nation as a global leader. Instead, we get state-sponsored propaganda to cover up all the Liberal failures. So when will the Prime Minister stop making excuses and take responsibility?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Sport.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives are saying that on this side of the House, we are blaming global factors. We're not. We're acknowledging global factors, and we are putting forth measures to address global factors, Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives want to completely ignore the fact that we live in a globally connected society and that price factors are influenced by global affairs like a war in the Middle East, Mr. Speaker. Gas prices are too high, so the Prime Minister announced that we are addressing that. We are also lowering their income tax, Mr. Speaker. We put forward other affordability measures like dental care and child care, things the Conservatives voted against.
The Honourable Member for Yellowhead.
Mr. Speaker, when gas and diesel prices rise, they drive up the cost of everything. Farmers, truckers, and grocery stores all feel it, while families pay for it. No wonder Canada's food inflation is the highest in G7 for the 4th month in a row. Conservatives called upon the Liberals to remove all gas taxes, but the Prime Minister plays politics, cutting a third of the tax for a third of the year. When will the Liberals remove the remaining gas taxes for the rest of the year and deliver real relief to our struggling Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Emergency and Management and Community Resilience.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Albertans are happy to hear that we're investing in them and that we're addressing affordability challenges in tangible ways. They know that by making a reduction in fuel costs from now till Labor Day, we'll save them money and it'll make it easier to travel to and from work and throughout our beautiful province. Albertans are looking for our government to provide solutions, and we're delivering.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Justice sent a text message to the Premier of Quebec apologizing for his remarks, suggesting that he wanted to regulate the use of the notwithstanding clause. Yet, that's exactly what he's doing with his challenge to Bill 21 before the Supreme Court. His brief and his oral arguments are clear. Ottawa wants to limit the use of the notwithstanding clause by restricting its preemptive use. So now that the Prime Minister has apologized, does he formally commit to never accepting the use of the notwithstanding clause be restricted, even preemptively? The Honourable Minister of Justice. Mr. Speaker, I have a great deal of respect for my friend, but I need to clarify. The federal government does not have the authority to change the power of provinces and the Constitution. We are going to protect the Constitution and respect provincial jurisdiction at the same time. My comments were in a context of the bill, which only concerns the federal government's power. That's all. The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, he may not have the power, but we know what the federal government's position is on the notwithstanding clause. And there's no misunderstanding. The government has spent at least $2 million fighting it at the Supreme Court for something it has no power over. Well, still, it wants to restrict Quebec's ability to preemptively use the notwithstanding clause. And what he's doing is exactly what he had to apologize to the Premier for. So rather than saying one thing and doing the opposite, does the government, can it commit to not restricting Quebec's power to invoke the notwithstanding clause in any way whatsoever? The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation. Mr. Speaker, I think my colleague was very clear. As the bloc leader, well, what my colleague was talking about was a bill at the Senate that it involves the federal government's use of the notwithstanding clause. It was nothing to do with the provincial power, which is in the Constitution. We respect jurisdiction. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable-Aubinière. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal Prime Minister was once again using the same old tired promises this weekend. Meanwhile, back home in L'Aubinière, L'Érable, and the Grand Nait region, families have to choose between filling up their gas tank or filling up their fridge. Why? Because the Liberals chose to only eliminate 1/3 of the federal taxes on gas. Well, the Liberal Prime Minister's magic wand won't work. When will he remove all taxes on all gas for the rest of the year to make life more affordable for everyone? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As of today, we are going to suspend the federal tax on gas, which will allow Canadians who are having a hard time right now to breathe a bit easier, even though we've also announced that on June 5, Canadians will receive a one-time payment under the groceries benefit. This check will go up to $150-$30, and we are here for Canadians. We know that Canadians need us, and our federal government is going to be there. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable-Aubinière. Well, how come things are such in a deplorable state? We have the worst food inflation in the G7 for the 4th month in a row. Fresh vegetables jumped 7.8% in March. This is unacceptable. How come they never talk about food prices, Mr. Speaker? And instead of always using the same excuses, I repeat my question. When will this Liberal Prime Minister cut all federal taxes on gasoline and do so for the rest of the year? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. I find this is surprising from my colleague when he says we never talk about this, even though, as I've noted, we have a national school food program. That is food for Canadians. So you voted against that. And also there's the Canadian grocery benefit. Well, that is allowed Canadians to afford groceries which are more expensive. So we are committed on this file. And we've also committed on gas. So half of these measures that are improving Canadians' purchasing power, well, they're voting against it. The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier, Mr. Speaker. When you hear them speak, everything sounds good. Canadians have their pockets full of money. As Canadians are facing a steady rise in the cost of living, particularly at the pump, the Liberal government is still content with half measures when it comes to cutting gas taxes. Can this government explain why it refuses to offer a significant tax relief to families, workers and businesses who simply can no longer afford to make ends meet? When will it stop prioritizing symbolic measures over concrete actions to help families and Canadian workers? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, my esteemed colleague must surely recognize that in his riding, like in the 343 ridings of Canada, gas prices will go down today by 10 cents a litre today, and 4 cents for diesel and fuel for aircraft as well. This assistance we are offering on a one-time basis because of this international conflict, which is causing shortages in petrol, and the Canadian government is proud to add these measures to all the other measures it has implemented to help make it easier for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, they're pleased to give 10 cents back to Canadians. It could have gone to 25 cents as we propose on the Conservative side. The government is once again hiding behind temporary programs just to pull the wool over people's eyes. The reality is that Canadians are still paying too much for gas today. Can they finally admit that their half measures on the gas tax make little difference at the pump and clearly state why they prefer to protect their tax revenues, pocketing billions of dollars at the expense of Canadian families and workers? The Honourable Minister. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we're pleased to have reduced gas prices by 10 cents by removing the federal excise tax. We're overjoyed to have reduced taxes for 22 million Canadians. We are overjoyed to have put forward the grocery benefit that helps 12 million of the most vulnerable Canadians. Will he one day be happy to see $72 million being invested in his riding for families? Will he ever be happy that thousands of his constituents are finally getting dental care? The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister spent the weekend repeating the same speech over and over again and the same promises over and over again. The issue is that Liberal taxes still mean Canadians pay 20% more for gas than Americans. When gas costs more, Mr. Speaker, everything costs more. Food inflation in Canada remains out of control, the worst in G7. Why won't the Liberals listen to us and scrap all taxes on gas for the rest of the year? The Honourable Secretary of State. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's true that Canadians need solutions. We are listening, and that's why we're making life more affordable by suspending the tax on fuel to help people overcome the storm. That's a saving of 10 cents for gas and 5 cents a litre for diesel. We're reducing costs for Canadians and building a better Canada. Mr. Speaker, the conflict in Sudan continues to be the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. 34 million people, close to 2/3 of the population, today need humanitarian help.
Had a devastating impact on the civilian population in Sudan. Our government is leading on the international stage. We are helping with humanitarian and development assistance to help the people of Sudan. Can the Secretary of State for International Development tell us how Canada is supporting the most vulnerable, the most affected by this devastating conflict?
Honourable Secretary of State for International Development.
Canada's support for the people of Sudan has been unwavering since the beginning of the conflict. Last week, our government announced more than $120 million in new assistance to support the people of Sudan and others across the region. This is about getting life-saving support to those who need it most and underscores Canada's commitment to addressing one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. Mr. Speaker, the people of Sudan deserve protection, dignity, and a path back to stability. Canada will continue to press for the conditions that make that possible.
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
A year ago, this Liberal Prime Minister said he was the one to get a deal from Donald Trump. Fast forward to this year, we've seen tens of thousands of job losses in the auto sector, the softwood lumber sector, the steel and aluminum sector, and now we have new tariffs on our manufacturers that are punishing our tool and die makers. What's this Liberal Prime Minister's response? Trade with America is a weakness. Let me explain something to these Liberals. There are 2.6 million Canadian jobs tied to trade with America. Other than I give up and trade with America is a weakness, what does this Liberal Prime Minister have to say to the Canadian families whose jobs rely on trade with America?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that trade with America continues to be important, but Canadians recognize, definitely my riding, that we need to diversify. That's why we're doing trade deals with other countries. That's why our auto strategy attempts to diversify to other countries and attract new investment. And while things are difficult, we know that there is good news, including new foreign direct investment statistics. In 2025, $96.8 billion in foreign direct investment to Canada, the largest amount in 18 years. That's good news while we're diversifying our trade.
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Have you ever had the experience of listening to people talk who actually say nothing? It's literally the Liberal response to every single question that you get in question period. There is the illusion of progress, the illusion that things are getting better with the trade relationship with the United States, and yet everything continuously gets worse. And they always say something's just around the horizon. My question was this: if they think trade is such a weakness for Canada, trade with the United States, what do they actually have to say to the 2.6 million Canadian families whose jobs rely on that trading relationship? Just an answer to that.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a very simple answer, which is we're fighting for them every day, and we're not going to do any deal at the expense of a bad deal. That's the answer, Mr. Speaker. And when it comes to the auto sector, you know, our companies continue to innovate. Our companies are saying we want to be part of the electric vehicle future. We want these investments in electric infrastructure. I was pleased to join on behalf of Minister of Industry an announcement for new investment in hydrogen electric vehicle heavy trucking. And that company, which I visited, Elemental Trucks, said this is huge news for our sector. This allows us to use Canadian components and Canadian innovation to export not only to Canada but across the world.
The honourable member for Windsor West.
Speaker, it's been 273 days since the Prime Minister promised a deal with Washington. Instead, we are seeing more tariffs now being applied to the full value of Canadian exports. That means businesses and workers in Windsor are being tariffed on their labor, their investment, and the products they build right here at home. When will the Prime Minister keep his word to the 2.6 million Canadian workers whose livelihoods depend on cross-border trade and deliver on the deal he promised a year ago?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister, along with the Minister for Canada-US Relations, continue to have dialogue with the U.S. administration. We'll continue to be there to support Canadian workers that are being impacted by unjustified and illegal tariffs. And we're having a conversation about the best pathway forward. Now, if that honourable member would suggest that we should have just thrown the cards on the table, got a bad deal, we don't agree. We were going to stand up for Canadian workers. We're going to stand up for workers in Windsor. By the way, I hope he's highlighting the fact immediate expensing for green housing. That is important in the Windsor-Leamington area. I hope that has made his householder, because I can almost promise he's not sharing the good news that this government's actually fighting for workers every single day, Mr. Speaker.
The The honourable member for Chatham-Kent-Leamington.
Mr. Speaker, manufacturers like mold makers, steel fabricators, aluminum extruders are at risk because this Prime Minister failed them. He promised a U.S. trade deal last July, but a year later, the tariffs have more than doubled. Auto machinery, parts, manufacturing materials, steel, aluminum, tariffs way up. These Canadian companies and jobs are at risk, while lower-cost countries, non-market economies are moving in to fill in the gap. When will the Prime Minister who is avoiding his responsibility, finally secure the American trade deal that he promised last July?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we know the importance of the U.S. market and the importance of that in continued engagement. This member is from Leamington. And I'm wondering if he's told his constituents about what was in Budget 2025 when the Minister of Finance provided immediate expensing for greenhouse infrastructure in this country. We see that Leamington area as an asset for greenhouses. I haven't heard him standing up talking about how important that is. But you know what, Mr. Speaker, as much as I respect that honourable member, the Conservatives had nothing for farmers in this country, nothing in their platform, especially nothing for farmers in southwestern Ontario, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Windsor-Tecumseh Lakeshore.
Mr. Speaker, last year the Prime Minister promised to end tariffs and fix our trade with the U.S., but he failed. This year on April 6, Section 232 tariffs increased dramatically and are putting up to 2.6 million Canadian jobs at risk. He calls our trade relationship a weakness, but the real weakness is his failure to make a deal. That's right. With millions of Canadian families at risk, when will the Prime Minister deliver results instead of more speeches, illusions, and excuses?
Here, here.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Speaker. The Prime Minister and this government will continue to work hard to get the best deal with the United States for Canadians. Our criteria is simple. The deal has to be one of the best deals. But Speaker, the Canadians also realize that if our country only relies on one country for its trade, that could turn into a weakness. That's why it's imperative that we work hard to diversify our trade, to do trades and create more markets from around the world. And that's why, Speaker, we're working with India and China and Southeast Asian countries and in Latin America to ensure that Canadian businesses have more opportunities to create good jobs right here in Canada.
The honourable member for Parry Sound Muskoka.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are being asked to believe that short-term measures will fix a long-term housing crisis. Meanwhile, Statistics Canada is showing that residential permits are down nearly 5% year over year, and in the GTA, new home sales are at a 35-year low. The Liberals are pointing to temporary measures like a one-year tax break and vague promises to costs being reduced by up to 50%. So if their plan relies on temporary measures, Mr. Speaker, how can Canadians believe that it will deliver the sustained increase in housing supply that Canada so desperately needs?
Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, we have good news. Housing starts are up almost 10% across Canada year to date. So we're seeing progress in terms of housing starts. We're seeing rents decrease. We're seeing mortgages reduced. We're seeing home prices reduced. So affordability is improving for housing across Canada. It's not just the short-term change that we have to grapple with the uncertainty we face. We have Build Canada Homes as the dedicated affordable housing agency here in Canada to build for generations to come. We expect members opposite to support that bill through Parliament. Thank you.
Honourable member for Parry Sound Muskoka.
Well, the Minister talks about more of these short-term measures, but Canadians have really been waiting for years. And in that time, affordability has worsened and supply has fallen. The Liberals promised to build 500,000 homes a year, but last year, not nearly half of that number were built.
Weird.
As it turns out, Liberal promises don't build homes. Canadians cannot wait any longer. So at what point will we see the real results that match the scale of what is needed in this country instead of the illusions that the Prime Minister continues to offer?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The results speak for themselves. Affordability for housing is improving over the last several years now. The actions taken by this government are having an immediate effect. We're seeing rents come down, we're seeing home prices come down, we're seeing housing supply increase. We do have immediate term measures to boost housing supply with provinces and territories. We're working with the cities, with Indigenous communities to build housing, supportive and transitional housing for people who are homeless, missing middle housing, student housing, across the board. We are investing, and we expect all members of this House to support affordable housing.
The honourable member for Quebec.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister promised to double home building, yet his own agency now expects construction to drop by 18%. At the same time, housing starts in Atlantic Canada are already down, including a 13% drop in Nova Scotia. When will the Prime Minister stop scapegoating and stop speechifying, get the bureaucracy out of the way, and deliver real results and real homes for Canadians?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, that member has my respect, but that member would have actually more my respect if he supported some of the housing initiatives that we have put forward. What about Build Canada Homes, Mr. Speaker, that's going to build homes at a scale not seen in generations? On this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we are focused on building homes, affordable homes for Canada. That side continues to vote against every housing initiative we have put forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Quebec,
Mr. Speaker, yet more grand pronouncements and grand announcements, and it's coming just beyond the rainbow and just around the corner. What Canadians want are real results and real homes. When are they going to deliver it?
the Honourable Secretary of State.
A lot of passion and fire and brimstone on that side of the House. I love it. But on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we are laser focused on building homes. Build Canada Homes, announced in Budget 2025, will build homes at a scale not seen in generations. That side of the House, Mr. Speaker, voted against every housing initiative we've put forward in the past 10 years. Time for that side of the House to stop the podcasts, stop the tours, stop the obstruction, stop the rhetoric, get on board. Let's build homes.
The Honourable Member for New Westminster, Burnaby, Mallardville.
Now it's your turn.
Mr. Speaker, today marks the opening of Canada Summer Jobs 2026.
Here, here.
With 100,000 positions that will be posted on the Job Bank that Canadians can visit on jobbank.gc.ca/youth. This is the largest number of summer job opportunities ever, with Budget 2025 investing in 24,000 more jobs this summer. Can the Secretary of State for Children and Youth please explain what this investment means for young Canadians?
Good question. The Secretary of State for Children and Youth.
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to share great news with my colleague from New Westminster, Burnaby, Mallardville, and this House. Today, young Canadians can now access summer jobs right across Canada. 100,000 opportunities, including lifeguarding in Burnaby, a day camp counselor in Brampton, or working on a golf course in Brookdale, Nova Scotia. 100,000 opportunities for young people to build skills, gain valuable work experience this summer. We're taking action to support youth across this country. Visit the Job Bank to learn more. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Barrie South Innisfil.
Speaking of jobs, if one has nothing to hide, they have nothing to fear. For 16 hours and 45 minutes, the Liberals have been filibustering the Ethics Committee meetings on a motion that would invite the Minister of Finance to appear before it about his assertion that he put an ethics screen in place because of his spouse's employment as Vice President at Alto. How can there be an ethics screen in place when the Minister has been participating in every decision on Alto since the screen was in place? What's the Minister hiding? And why are Liberal members of the committee not wanting him to appear?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as that member knows, because he lives under the same rules, all of us in this House, all public office holders in Canada, live under some of the strictest ethics rules in the world. That Minister of Finance rigorously follows these rules, as must all members, and he will continue to do so.
Honourable Member for South Barrie Innisfil.
Well, here's what this member knows. We've seen the future of a Liberal majority at committee, and the future is now. Just last week, the Liberal Prime Minister promised Canadians they would see less showboating, more relevance and substantive debate at committee. What we're actually seeing at committee is Liberal obstruction and a clear sign that they will further obstruct the work of committees and not allow for transparency, accountability, and the truth to be exposed. If the finance minister has nothing to hide, why won't he come to committee and explain why he discussed and voted on portions of the budget specifically related to Alto when he said he would not?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, what Canadians are witnessing and what they are quite rightly sick of is conservative filibustering, obstruction, getting in the way of the plans for our economy, the plans to build this country, the plans to attract investment, to diversify trade and put men and women to work while getting Canadians' costs down. These guys have been obstructing that for months now, Mr. Speaker, and one can only hope we'll get a respite from that.
The Honourable Member for Montmorency-Charlevoix. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This afternoon, the Ethics Committee will continue the 17th hour of the Liberals' stand-up comedy routine. A monologue stretched out as long as possible to avoid calling three people paid by the country to give evidence: the Minister of Finance, the Ethics Commissioner, and the CEO of Alto. We were told they have better things to do than come and answer legitimate questions about the recusal that was not respected. So last week, we had got as far as talking about cows, hay, and the quality of milk. Could the Prime Minister perhaps tell his actors that the charade has gone on long enough and that he gives a go-ahead for the Minister to come and testify? The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House. Mr. Speaker, the member knows full well, because he is subject to the same rules. All 343 members do so, and everyone who is of a high rank in the public service has to subject themselves to the strictest ethics rules in the world. And we will continue to do so, and the Minister of Finance will continue to do so.
For Mississauga Centre.
Mr. Speaker, today, perhaps more than ever, Canada has what the world wants. This past year, we welcomed a record number of visitors, with last summer alone generating over $60 billion in tourism revenue. In Mississauga, we see that potential firsthand. From Square One to Celebration Square, from the Riverwood Conservancy to Port Credit, from Streetsville and the Egyptian Museum to, of course, Ridgeway Plaza. As we mark the start of National Tourism Week, can Mississauga's own, the Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Secretary of State for Small Business and Tourism, share how our government will continue to support our tourism sector, create good jobs, and strengthen our economy?
The Honourable Minister.
Colleague for his support of our tourism industry that has hit a record $60 billion last summer, thanks to the help of the Canada Strong Pass. Last week, I announced $15 million through the International Convention Attraction Fund to bring international events here to Canadian cities. To date, ICAF has secured 116 events with over 324,000 attendees and generated $803 million of economic impact, Mr. Speaker. We're supporting local businesses, we're creating good jobs, and strengthening our tourism industry. Mr. Speaker, happy Tourism Week.
Nice. The Honourable Member for Red Deer.
Mr. Speaker, Red Deer exceeded housing starts for 2 straight years by cutting bureaucracy and using common sense solutions. Exactly what Conservatives have been calling for. Under our Conservative plan, cities like Red Deer would be rewarded for building homes. Instead, the Liberal one-size-fits-all approach punishes mid-sized cities like Red Deer, while funneling resources to Liberal vote-rich strongholds, which home building dropped. Well, the Minister committed today to stop punishing Red Deer, scrap the failed Liberal scheme, and adopt a Conservative plan to build homes, not...
The Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government is leading the national effort to solve the housing crisis by working with cities and towns across Canada to get more housing built. To reduce red tape, the Housing Accelerator Fund has been very successful, working with 241 communities across the country. Those communities made commitments. This government holds everyone accountable to their commitments. The integrity of those agreements is important. We are seeing great results, and Red Deer is one of the cities that is delivering housing supply. That's our goal.
The member for Red Deer, one would think, would want to hear the answer because the question was about his community. The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Thursday, in question period, in response to a question from the member for Edmonton Strathcona, the Minister of Energy completely dismissed any concern about the recent nearly 1 million litre leak from the pipeline of Imperial Oil on Cold Lake First Nation territory, on top of frequent spills and leaks by Imperial from their tailings ponds and elsewhere. With Earth Day on Wednesday, I wonder if, as the Speaker says, the Honourable Minister might want to take it from the top and give a response that at least pretends to be concerned about the environment.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my friend for the question. We, of course, acknowledge and take seriously the concerns raised by Indigenous communities in the region around where tailings ponds safety risks happen. Pollution from oil sands tailings is a serious issue that affects Canada's waters, ecosystems, and well-being of communities. Our government is committed to protecting the health of communities as well as Canada's waters, fish, and ecosystems today and for generations to come. That's why we're working closely with the Crown Indigenous Working Group, along with the affected communities, First Nations, provinces, and industry to develop a long-term, science-based solution, and we look forward to their recommendations.
That concludes question period.